A new report from Forrester highlights how challenging digital transformation is. For Tech Republic and ZDNet, my name is Dan Patterson with Larry Dignan and Bill Detweiler with some of the data and statistics around digital transformation success. So Larry, according to the Forrester report, digital transformation is in kind of a sorry state. Is this really a sorry state, or is this just natural selection?
Well, it's interesting. The Forrester report basically points out that I think the most interesting stat was 21% of companies think they're done, right? So they've checked it off the list. They're digitally transformed. It's all good. I would love to see these companies. It's kind of funny. But the point here is that a lot of companies are talking about digital transformation, these next gen technologies, but they're not really using them. They're kind of talking about it, right? And, they consider this a sorry state, right? Because, it's just, they feel like digital transformation should be farther along. Companies should have a plan. They should be working this thing. And the companies don't get that it's an ongoing type of thing. I looked at it and said, well, it's kind of tough to get your head around, right? Like, I don't know if it's really a sorry state or like you said, it might just be natural selection, right? Because we all want to be buff. We all want to be mentally all there and, self-aware and have our act together. We want to be, we all want to eat healthy. We all want to do all this stuff, right? Digital transformation is very similar, right? It's this ongoing slog. Requires discipline and requires ongoing things. And if companies are basically made of people, so my guess is there's only probably going to be 10% of the companies that pull digital transformation off anyway, right? I mean, that's why companies live and die. There's a life cycle for these things, right? For every Kodak, there's zillions of Kodaks, right? But there's very few of those companies that make those pivots into new markets and digitally transform and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, honestly, I looked at digital transformation and Forrester's overall take was sort of, all companies, need to do this and should be doing it, and it's a journey. But I mean, if you just look at life in general, I have a hard time seeing that every company is going to nail digital transformation. I mean, if it were that easy, everybody would be doing it already or have done it. So they just talk about the other thing that comes up in that report a lot is, the resistance to change. How there's sort of like an old legacy guard in these companies and folks that want to digitally transform things. And, resistance to change is another human condition, right? So I kind of look at us and I guess it's a sorry state if you want to take the half empty thing, but I kind of look at it and think, I'm not necessarily optimistic about digital transformation, but, it's kind of reality, right? Like not every company is going to pull this off, and that's okay. They'll get run over down the road somewhere. So yeah, that's sort of, the perspective here is kind of interesting, right? Because I just don't think that everybody's going to pull off digital transformation. And I think if you go into thinking that as a goal, I think you're just going to, get disappointed by the whole thing.
Bill, I know that at Tech Pro Research, we have quite a bit of data that validates what Larry said, that digital transformation is a process and that it's pretty challenging.
It is, yeah. I mean, what we found when we looked at this in 2017 was that we asked people, so where are you? Do you have a digital transformation strategy? And we found about 20% of companies said they already have one, or they already are going through this process, like Larry said. We have about 60% that are kind of working on a digital transformation strategy or plan, and then about 20% don't have one at all. So you kind of have this mix of companies about where they are in the process. And to build on something that Larry said was really interesting, we looked at the reasons why companies find it challenging to implement a digital transformation strategy. What are some of the barriers or roadblocks that they encounter? A little more than half, about 52%, told us that they have a problem finding room in the budget for these technologies. And so that's a challenge. We also found that about 45% actually have problems, like Larry said. This really goes to the heart of what Larry said about employees being made up of people. About 45% of these companies told us that they have a hard time convincing their employees or convincing people of the benefits of a digital transformation strategy at all. And then we also found that security was a chief concern, where 45% of people said that that was what was sort of a roadblock, securing these new digital systems that they're trying to move to.
I think the business reality part is huge, right? Digital transformation sounds great when your company's doing well and you're trying to get a hold of that next curve. When the business isn't doing so well, you're fighting for budget, and it's hard to allocate those funds for digital transformation. And two very high profile examples, we're seeing this unfold now. You got GE, right? They were all about the industrial internet. They were all about predicts. They were all about digitizing basically everything from maintenance to, I mean, they were going to be basically a tech vendor. And now, you know, GE's blown up, the market cap's been sliced in half and then some, and they've cut their dividend and they're struggling and they're being pushed to break up, and the company's constantly restructuring. And suddenly, you know, the last conference call they had last week, there was barely any mention of digital. There certainly wasn't a mention of predicts. Ford, another one. Remember 2 years ago, Ford was talking about mobility, bike sharing, ride sharing, smart cities, all sorts of stuff. Today, you know, business is a little more challenged. They need to produce some stuff. They're, you know, restructuring a lot. They're cutting cars, focusing on trucks. You know, the whole digital thing, that's kind of been tossed to the side. So, you know, digital transformation sounds great until your house is burning down and you need to put it out, right? So that's sort of the reality. And that's kind of where we are with digital transformation. It's that reality is hitting the long-term thinking.
This may sound counterintuitive, but are there any benefits to either A, not undergoing a digital transformation, or B, looking at the process as, like you said, Larry, very long-term and very slow?
I think the whole digital transformation term, I think it's more about thinking ahead. It's more about constantly thinking about how you're going to be disrupted, and looking at new technologies to leverage, right? And I think it's almost a way of thinking more than anything, right? You may not take on every project, but you have to keep thinking that way if you want your company to survive long term. And, you know, so it's almost a way of thinking. It's almost a construct that's been wrapped into digital transformation. But I think that's, you know, not every project's going to be taken on. And, you know, I don't know if every business needs to be digital, but every business needs to keep getting more and more efficient and look at how they can reach new customers. So that's kind of where it comes from.
And I think, building on that too, I think the term digital transformation is a little misleading, because, you know, it's not, like Larry says, you know, it's not the destination, it's about this continuous journey. So when we asked companies about, so what actually are you doing as part of your digital transformation strategy, almost 50%, around 40 some odd percent, told us that they're actually, you know, they're moving systems to the cloud. Well, that was something we've been talking about, the cloud, for a decade. You know, we've been talking about the cloud as part of IT strategies for years before the term digital transformation came around. Another thing that people are talking about as part of their digital transformation is data analytics. Data analytics to improve risk assessment, to improve sales, to improve supply chain management. Well, we've been talking about big data, we've been talking about analytics, we've been talking about all of these things for decades. So I think that too often some of these companies get caught up in the buzzword of digital transformation, and they don't understand, like Larry said, they don't understand the hard business realities that they have to face in getting there.
All right, well, digital transformation is hard. Well, fortunately, we have ebooks, PDF downloads, and a ton of guides on Tech Pro Research, ZDNet, and Tech Republic. For Larry Dignan and Bill Detweiler, I'm Dan Patterson.